Hello, as you know, me and Matt enjoy a beer when we sit down to watch the films for Fighting on Film, and we know many of you do as well. And we're pleased to be partnered up with Double Diamond, courtesy of Allsop's Brewery.
Yes, so if you want to win some delicious double diamonds, simply follow us over on Instagram. Follow Double Diamond Beer and Fighting on Film to be entered into the draw. And remember, Double Diamond works wonders. So drink one today.
Indeed. And if you'd be so kind, drop us a 5-star review on whatever podcast app you're listening on. It really helps the show grow and find new listeners. So, without further ado, we're into this week's film. 1969's The Gladiators slash The Peace Game by the late Peter Watkins, who passed away at the age of 90 last month. So we thought we'd look back at one of his films that we haven't covered because we've done Forgotten Faces, The War Game, we've not done Culloden, and we've done the First World War one that he did as well.
The
So,
Unknown Soldier, yeah, from
The Unknown
59. That
Soldier.
was one of his earliest. So we've done a fair few Peter Watkins films, and we
Yeah.
always talk very highly of Forgotten Faces and The War Game specifically. This one is one that has always stood out as being a really, really interesting premise for a film.
Yeah, premise being the strong word there. So to give you a bit of a synopsis before Matt gets into cast, the synopsis is mankind's attempt to control its aggressive tendencies results in the proliferation of a televised gladiatorial bout.
Think Battle Royale meets The Running Man meets the Cold War,
Yeah,
which sounds amazing, doesn't it? That sounds like a really exciting, interesting premise for a film.
it sounds fabulous. Yeah, and if I'm sounding a bit echoey today, folks, I'm in my mum's living room, so off on the move. So Matt, you're into cast.
Yeah, interesting one this week. A couple of well-known faces pop up, and then a whole host of people that were essentially first and only credits.
You find that with Watkins, though.
Arthur Pentlow, yeah, but it's Watkins' MO, isn't it? Arthur Pentlow plays the British general. He appeared in a 1964 episode of Red Cap, The Avengers, and a very long stint on Emmerdale. Frederick Dana also plays a British staff officer. Also appeared in a 1966 episode of Red Cap, and Gladiators was his last credit. Then we have a whole host of people appearing as generals from the Warsaw Pact and from the Western aligned NATO nations as well. As I say, most of those actors, this was their first and only credit. We have Jürgen Schilling, who plays a East German officer who chimes in every now and then. He had a long German TV career, including TV and film career, including numerous European sexploitation films. George Harris plays a Nigerian officer. This is his first credit, but would be by no means his last. He appeared in a 1977 episode of The Professionals. He appeared in 1979's The Yanks, The Dogs of War in 1980, Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981, and Black Hawk Down in 2001, amongst many other British TV and TV film and film productions. Perhaps the most interesting credit list comes with the actor Jeremy Child, who played B1, who is a British soldier who is forcibly volunteered to be part of the British Party
Yeah,
that
they
takes
kind of
part
don't
in
make
the
that
games.
clear enough. It would really
Um,
help
he,
if this
he
movie
had a
had told
really
you more.
busy he had a really busy 1969, appearing in Play Dirty and Oh What a Lovely War. He also appeared in 1972's Young Winston, the TV series Wings, 1977, Quadrophenia, Churchill: The Wilderness Years in 1981, Florence Nightingale, 1985, the TV film, Sharp's Enemy as Farthingale in 1994. He also appeared in The Falklands Play in 2002 and The Darkest Hour in 2017. And then finally, rounding out the cast this week, we have Pixem Lim, who plays C2, and she's a Chinese soldier who is part of the opposing team. She's actually a British Malaya-born actress. She appeared in a 1980 episode of The Professionals, Spearhead, as a recurring character from 1978 to
Oh wow,
81.
it's been months since the Spearhead reference.
There you go.
Blimey.
She played Cy Park, who appears in I think season 2.
Oh yeah, because they're in Hong Kong. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
stationed in
exactly.
Hong Kong. Yeah.
And then lots of TV well into the 2020s, and a really interesting list of credits. And yeah, that's the cast. I was
Mm,
surprised how much I got. I'll be honest.
I was too because
There was a moment where I thought none of these people have any credits other than Gladiators, but
yeah,
then a couple
it's that
did.
thing with Watkins where he's very much himself, and he did a film with actors, Privilege, 1967, and
Mm,
he tanked, and it nearly ruined his career. Really, he talks about it at length on his website, but he kind of shunned casting, like actual
mm,
actors, if he could. Like he'd get up and comers or people you wouldn't know, because I think
yeah,
he doesn't want the actor to take you out of what he's trying to say
yeah,
to you.
totally. What's
Um,
happened in this case?
for sure. So we're into production. And of course, it's directed by the late Peter Watkins, best known for his, at the time, pioneering docudramas, including Culloden, The War Game, which won him an Academy Award, and later Punishment Park and The Commune. And he later
Don't forget
spoke about them.
Resan.
Oh yeah,
Don't forget
Ressan. Yep, the
Resan, the
14
journey, the
hour
14-hour.
40. We never do that.
No, no. That's
Watch that in your own time,
a bridge
folks.
too far. Yeah.
Very much. And he spoke about the making of the film on his website. I was approached by Sandrews in Stockholm. Sandrews was a major cinema distributor at the time, with a production company. They were producing 2 films by Susan Sontag. They just premiered The War Game in Stockholm and offered to produce any film I chose to make. Nicholas Gosling, a young writer, joined me in developing the script, which would become my second feature, The Gladiators. This was written by both Watkins and Gosling. This is Gosling's only writing credit. Cinematography was by Peter Szczycki. He worked on The War Game, It Happened Here, The Rocky Horror Picture Show. He later goes on to be the cinematographer of The Empire Strikes Back. And then he would be a frequent collaborator with David Cronenberg throughout the
Yeah, incredible career.
80s, 90s. So, like, really good pedigree here, really in the infancy of his career. And it was filmed in the summer and autumn of 1968 in Karlstad near Stockholm and released in Sweden in July 1969 to an incredibly mixed reception at home and abroad. And there's no budget given at all, and there's no box office take at all for this one. I think it may have done the rounds at film festivals, probably done the rounds at anti-war groups and C&D groups and things like that, because that's how the war game got
Probably had a
traction.
couple of TV showings now and then, and
Maybe,
DVD and
perhaps.
VHS releases probably on small runs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely French DVDs of Watkins' work because he later lived in France. So I think there are French versions of those. So a very incredibly slim production for this one. So we're into the retro review from The Guardian. And this is one of the, well, I say nicer reviews, but there isn't really any kind reviews for
Well, if
this
you head over
movie.
to Watkins's website, he very kindly, warts and all, included a whole host of
Oh, yeah.
reaction at the time
This was my
snippets from
favourite,
reviews,
though.
didn't he?
Yeah, this is my favorite from the Daily Express. So they say an ingenious idea, but director Watkins has developed it with a naivety and such crude characterization that it is impossible to take it seriously, even as a moral fable. The film moves so slowly that you can practically hear it snoring. I mean,
Mm,
that's one of the that's one of the most perhaps bang on reviews we've ever had on the show. But
yeah.
what did you guys think in the one word reviews? Me and Matt we almost took bets to see who had seen this, because boy howdy, is Watkins' work post Wargate quite obscure. Um, so we had Brian Williams, obscure. Paul Burns, unseen. Martin Winkup, systematic. AD Bond, unknown. And then Jeff Mawson also put obscure. And, what do you expect from fighting on film? Come on,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. This is as soon as we heard that Peter Watkins had died, and we were quite, taken aback by that, sad news. Um, I suggested we do another one of his films, to kind
Yeah.
of commemorate his life's work. And of course, out of the two that we could have done, Culloden or the Gladiators, we chose the Gladiators,
We
mostly on the
thought, you know
premise.
what?
And I have to admit, I had seen the film before, and ooh, yeah, I
Boy,
completely
howdy.
forgotten. I'd completely forgotten. It is quite a ride.
I'd seen a clip of it at university for some reason when I was doing some monologue work. I looked
Mm.
this up because I was writing an anti-war monologue at the time, and I'd seen a clip of it, and I remembered it quite being quite flashy. But over the years, clearly that's not what it was. So let's talk about some positives in the alley tally, and then.
It's time for Alley Tally on Fighting on Film.
Hello there, sorry to interrupt. I wanted to let you know that you can now join our supporting cast over on Patreon. As thanks for your support, you'll be able to help us pick films, submit questions for guests, have first pick on brand new and exclusive merch, and much more. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show. I think the strength of this film is the characterization of the two teams.
If in
And
terms of what?
in terms of uniforms
Okay,
and
representation
equipment,
wise,
yes,
yes,
yes.
yeah.
I mean, the the kit and uniforms are 90% of their characterization. To be fair
Oh
to them,
God, yeah. Oh
but
God, yeah.
we, the nature is that the Warpack team, the communist team, is entirely Chinese. So it's Chinese Red Army PLA, I should say.
It's like it's implied that it's their turn in the game. It's because
Yeah, which is so
yeah,
weird because it. Okay, let's talk a little before we go into full alley tally and we talk about some of the interesting bits and bobs. Let's kind of like preface this because no one's seen it with just a little bit of background on the concept of the peace game. So the peace game idea is
that's
that
Ali in itself. Actually, I'll
it
give
is
him
it's
that.
a
Yeah,
the whole concept is really clever, and I don't know where they devised it from or whether it was based on a concept that had been mooted in perhaps contemporary
like media
writing.
or something. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
because it is
it's
science fiction, isn't it? To
I
preface.
had that in my notes. Yeah, there's a strong undercurrent of science fiction to this. So the game's set in Sweden, and Sweden apparently have, as a neutral nation, have a monopoly on hosting this game. And out of a defense budget of 300 million krona, they spend 30% of that on the machine that runs the peace
Yeah, the
game.
machine. Oh,
Yeah. You never see the machine. You do see a Swedish Fred Dibner lookalike in a boiler room
yeah.
turning some valves and hitting things with a spanner at one point.
You see the control room with
Oh, in
all
the
the flashy
control room with all
buttons.
the buttons that don't seem to
Yeah.
correspond to anything, but we'll come back to
No.
that. So anyway, so it's the 251st game, and in the dialogue, one of the generals says, "As a weekly audience," which suggests that they're playing this weekly,
Yeah.
and 251 weeks worth of the peace game have been aired, and they get a good audience, and it's sponsored by a
Pasta
bolognese
company.
pasta company,
Yeah.
which is great. And I thought they were going to lean into the commercialization of
I
the
thought that
commercialization and
too.
game the gamer gamification of war, but they didn't,
It would
which
have been
I
really
thought
cool to
was.
see like a Premier League table,
Yeah, that would have been
football table
that would have made
or
sense.
something.
Them showing us a league table of
Yeah.
how many, and it said in the dialogue that NATO hasn't won for a while, but it's very loose the way that they characterize and develop this idea of the machine and the game, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. But basically, it's half a dozen fellas from various armies thrust together with no cohesion whatsoever. So you've got like two British lads, one British guy's commanding it. He's like a lieutenant or a captain, and then you got the two Americans, a South Vietnamese dude,
Yeah, Arvin
maybe
chap.
maybe a French guy
Yeah.
who disappears
Maybe a
halfway
guy from
along.
Thailand or South Korea, perhaps.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then the opposing team is all PLA, People's Liberation Army, China. And yeah, so getting back to the alley tally, I think the introduction to the PLA troops is great. They're all there in their greens. They've got the little SKS. It's got the knapsacks. Got the belt kit. They've got the little flat field caps. They've got their face masks on, and they come jogging along the railway line. It just looks
They're really regimented.
quite well shot, and they're imposing. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the British troops are decked out in extremely lesser spotted 60 pattern fatigues.
Yeah.
So essentially, think of a DPM camo jacket, but it's just green, and it's like
if you've seen 71, then you'll have seen it more recently.
Yeah.
It's the original OD.
The movie 71, Matt means.
Yes.
With Jack O'Connell. Yeah, it's very. This is very sort of. It was used for maybe a 3 to 4 year period, and then we switched over to camo. And you just
no. I think it was around for like 10 years.
Oh, was it?
That was it. But it's.
You barely ever see it in media.
It comes in at like 62. It's around to about 70.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of film representation, it's probably the only time it's ever been seen, apart from 71. They've got Sterlings, they've got SLRs, 58 pattern webbing. I think the Americans are interesting because they're dressed as Marines, but specifically like Way Marines.
Way Marines,
so Way's just happened, or is happening while this movie's being made. So this is real cutting edge, and they've got their M51 style like flak jackets. They've got packs of cigarettes in their headbands.
Got bits of link,
helmet bands,
belted ammo around them.
But ammo.
But it's not. If you look closely, it's like just bullets held together because they didn't have link. I think at some point, one of the guys anyway. It's a really hard film to see and identify things because it's so dark. A lot of it takes place in tunnels, and also the grading on it is also quite dark on the available copies. So it's hard to make out. Like, for instance, there's a errant submachine gun that I couldn't ID. I thought it was a MAP 49 at one point, but it wasn't with the NATO guys. But it disappears within minutes.
Yeah.
But what I did spot in the US troops, the sergeant, the NCO. He's carrying a Webley Shermully riot gun.
Oh, he
is standing in for an M79, I think.
For a thumper, yeah, definitely so. Yeah, because they fire off a round with it, don't they? And there's an explosion up in the only bit of fighting that we get later on in the movie. But I thought it was interesting as well. I mean, it's a good representation of NATO in that era. And then you've also got to think, well, this is a game, this is a science fiction. So for them to have older kit is cool anyway, different. Excuse me.
The Germans have got FALs, which is fine. That's believable.
And they're everyone who's not British is sort of an American kit, and that's quite cool because obviously a lot of nations have bought surplus American equipment or been sort of semi-funded with American equipment after the war.
Some of the Americans have M16s, and then I think the Arban dude has an M1 carbine.
Yeah, that scans as well. It's all it's all cobbled together, but it makes sense.
It works.
It helps.
Chinese have PPSH and SKSs.
Yeah,
that you briefly see when they're approaching.
Yeah, the kit is much better than I was expecting this movie to have. Like, I didn't think they would go this hard in on it.
Could have been pretty weak. There's some Swedish troopers that arrive on motorcycles to police the
game
end of the game, and they have French Mass 36s, which is a bit weird.
They're like stormtroopers in a way, aren't they? They're like riot police. They're interesting.
They're quite imposing. There's a tracking shot of them approaching on bikes, like 3 abreast, and it's like, okay, I see what you're doing here.
Pretty cool, yeah. And then you've got all the officers in their sort of safe room in all their regalia. Their sort of like dress wear, which is quite good as well. It's quite well researched, and you've got everyone from Indian, African, East German, West German. It's a real good cross section of the world, military wise, in that era. It's really good, but like getting onto what we think later. But in terms of Ali, there was way more than I thought there would be.
Yeah, not bad at all. There was a nice little bit in that firefight where the West German guy's FAL keeps jamming, And he's like,
Oh,
give
yeah.
me your gun. And he takes another one. That one keeps jamming.
Yeah, but they kind of tell you in the script that these men have been sort of, they get narration from who I assume is Watkins. I don't know if
It's
it
not
is.
listed as him.
No.
The chap, the narrator is listed as, I think it's Paul Bakerfield.
Oh, okay, maybe it's someone else.
And that's his only credit on it. So I don't know whether that was a
Right.
nom de guerre or what, but yeah.
But no, they say that the men have been trained for X amount of years, X amount of, like schooling and everything else. And you kind of feel like they've only been bred to do this. So, like, the fact they are a bit bumbling kind of works. But then by the
Yeah.
time they tell you that, you've seen them bumble. So it would have been nice to know that before. There's interesting choices taken here, narrative-wise. Maybe we should get into favourite scenes, talk more about what we liked and what we didn't. Matt, you might as well kick us off.
It may interest you to know that there are 2 podcasters alive at the moment, but they may not be in 4 minutes' time. That's the narrator has this habit of chiming in every 25 minutes, telling us when people are going to die. And then what the film does is it doesn't show us them die.
No.
Because when it first says it, 4 men are going to die in the next 28 minutes, and then we see no one die. The NCO gets wounded, but it's a weird. There's a weird disjointedness between the dialogue and the actual direction on screen.
Yeah.
It's a weird element, and obviously, my favorite scene is the scene with the hippie ladies that appear.
Oh, really?
Soundtracked by sitar music, obviously.
That was batshit when that happened.
Oh, it's classic art house.
I choked out. I checked out. I checked out by that point.
Choked out. Yeah.
Might as well have been watching this.
Just a nice little surrealist sequence thrown in the middle of it, where they're all like, "What the hell's going on?"
Yeah.
Doesn't really achieve anything.
No.
They just stand there, and the 3 women in bikinis kind of like walk around them a bit and do a little bit of shimmying, and then there's
Give
some
flowers,
sitar music.
Hippie,
they're in a room that is supposed to be nice, but clearly isn't.
It looks like a mine shaft.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
It's like, okay. There's a bit where they cut to Fred Dibner in the machine room, in the engine room, and he goes, the control room chap says, "Oh, tell them to turn the steam on in the jungle." And you're like, oh, okay, cool. There's going to be like a weird, surreal jungle bit. Essentially, they're entering the crystal maze of the Cold War.
It feels like that, yeah.
But they don't do any of this.
No, they don't.
So they just turn around and like, oh, we're in a. They're basically in a what looks like a brickworks, and they attack a brickworks.
Filmed in a factory, yeah.
Exactly. They attack this brickworks. They get into the building, and then they're like, "What should we do?" Oh, there's a shaft here. Should we go down the shaft? Because we have to follow the red lights to win the game to get to the control room.
The rules are so convoluted.
Spoilers, the control room's not even in that building.
You never see the control room. Really?
Well, no, you only see the 2 dudes in it. You never see where it is. And it's in like that country house at the end where the French dude who just turns up and electrocutes his hand for 10 minutes on the door. And then they let him in.
I know. I can't get over this, Matt. The concept of the game is to follow the lights.
Yeah.
And what essentially is a televised training exercise with real ammo. Yet you're already giving the people playing it the means to win already. It makes no fucking sense. So it's the first swear this week. There'll be more. But keep going. Sorry. It perplexes the mind.
Yeah. So there's another scene that's filmed in this area with the hippie ladies, between a Swedish officer and a French political activist, probably akin to CND, wants to destroy the machine, build his own machine, apparently, or some shit like that. He does explain it in a very roundabout manner. He sits down with.
They don't want him in the factory, but they let him in.
They don't want him in. He tries to get in, and he ends up electrocuting him and getting burns on his hand.
Yeah.
Where they like prevent him from entering the arena, I guess.
The inner workings,
The brickworks. But then within like 30 seconds, they open the door and he just walks in. And you're like, well, why did you let him in? What's the point of that? Anyway,
and then they
so
try
he
and
sat
talk him round.
25 minutes later, you don't see him for a while. Like
No.
35, I don't know, pacing on this film's not good. I'm going to say it now. The pacing on this film makes you feel like you're wading through molasses while watching a really depressing film. So essentially, 40 minutes into the film, he comes back. He wanders down this tunnel, accidentally shoots a police officer that stops him.
Yeah.
That doesn't even know what's going on. He fumbles and I think it's a Walther PPK, like shoots him in the stomach or something. Leaves him on the floor dead. Leaves him on the floor. It's fine. I'm a pacifist. I'm here to stop the machine. Just shot a policeman. Probably shouldn't have done that. Anyway.
That man goes to some Manic Street Preachers. That is my blow.
Yeah.
I've walked the brickworks, but no with real intent.
So he sits him down with this Swedish officer and he puts like a cassette player down on the table and it's like, it's a translator. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a transistor radio, but okay. And they're both like sat there with little earbuds in and they're talking in their respective languages and it's translating for them. And basically the Swedish officer's like, well, what are you doing here? What do you want to achieve? And he's like, oh, we need intelligent, mindful people like you. Why don't you join us? And I'm like, why would he join you? He's here to break the machine.
Yeah, clearly you know that as well.
Yeah, and then he just lets him go, and then he arrives in the machine shop engine room where Fred Dibner was earlier, and basically the machine at this point has been turned off. We'll come to why in a minute, but he turns it back on and then follows the lights to the control room, and the film ends with him and the main controller sat talking about the machine. And the French activist says, "I want to reshape the machine into something better, something more hopeful for mankind." And I'm like, "Well, why? What's the point? What's it going to do? Just have everyone round for tea every day?"
Because this machine stops there being wars. That's the point of these games.
Yeah, everyone's spending massive amounts on defense still.
Yeah, so
because they don't really think the 250 other games of peace game they've played are having an effect. Yeah,
maybe the tricky away fixture for Norway and fucking East Germany might swing things next week. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's no jeopardy here. Like there's nothing at stake. And that's the problem. So I'll jump in with my favorite.
What's your favorite scene? What's your favourite scene? Go on.
Well, you kind of didn't. You kind of slid into your hated scene. So I really like the start when the Allied team actually start playing.
Classic Watkins starts. Classic Watkins in the just before you go on a little bit. Before that, as they start, it has the classic Watkins to camera interview of like. And where are you from? And how old are you? And why are you here? And all this news reporter.
Perfect Watkins trope. Yeah.
News
really
reporter-esque. Really interesting. Kind of, that's about the only characterization we get of the characters before they're thrown into the game.
They're so one-dimensional. It hurts.
They are.
It really hurts.
Even their answers to the reporter questions.
Yeah, they're really pretty standard. Not good. So my favourite bit is at the start when the Allied team start the game and they're saying, where should we go? And the officer goes, well, we'll follow the red lights because that's the hardest way, but it's the quicker way, so we'll go that way. And then there's some explosions that go off, and it's not really artillery, it's not really mortar fire, but it's kind of implied that they're charges that are just going off around them.
Set off by the machine.
And they hide in a trench. If you can hear scratching, it's my mum's dog. They're really they're like scared, frightened, they don't know what's going on, and they start talking into a radio. Talk about like coordinates, things like that, and the narration goes, at this part in the game, they're calling through to their superiors to help them out, something like that. And they go, of course, there's no one at the other end of the line. And I thought, oh, great, are we gonna get to see the inner workings of how this game works, how it toys with the men, and how it makes it like it makes it
a challenge.
yeah, in it, like, twists them and makes them do things they wouldn't normally do or whatever, or this is how the game works, and it's all for naught or whatever. But then we don't do that anymore. But then and that's when the film feels like it's most war movie esque, which is what I wanted this movie to do a lot more of, because there was a real chance here to do something quite postmodern and genre bending for its day, and it just doesn't go there. But in that sort of first 40 minutes, there is this real sort of great thing that just tails off completely, goes completely off the rails. Once you see the bikini women, the bikini clad babes, once you see those, the movie just dives off. And I think we should dive into final thoughts, because I think we've got a lot to get through. As you'll know, Fighting on Film and Warfare Media partnered up to give our listeners a huge discount on high quality Cold War posters. But now there's more. Warfare Media also offers clothing and the chance to order OP4 DPM camouflage uniforms. Support the podcast and use the code FOF20 at checkout for 20% off your order. Don't delay, visit warfaremedia.net today. Conceptually, fantastic. This film as a concept is strong. Like you mentioned earlier, the whole thing about they're playing these games so they can avoid another big war, and it's entertainment for the masses. It's done every week. It's like sports. It's become a sport. They don't directly say that, but it's kind of like that's what it's posed to. You've got the officers in their sort of ivory tower, it doesn't matter what happens to them, and they're reacting to it quite apoplectically, and they're apathetic. They don't really care, but they have to see the game through. And then the film just abandons that concept so quickly. And it goes into a series of really bizarre non sequiturs that are meant to make the viewer reflect on the wider military-industrial complex, the wider sort of effect of man and war and NATO and the non-aligned countries, and how Warpack is all interplaying with each other at this time in the Cold War. But none of that translates well into film, because that should be dealt with in a documentary sense, not documentary drama, which is, but in a documentary film, because you can talk to the audience more and present your ideas to them. But it's just flawed because it's so concerned with its own morality and rhetoric. It doesn't make an overally good, entertaining movie, which I feel like this could have done both, and it just doesn't.
Yeah, no, that is entirely fair, and I think the characterization of the generals leans really heavily into the concept of lions led by donkeys, which Alan Clark popularized in the in his book the Donkeys, and I think and there was a couple of books around that time, and then Oh What Lovely War came out, and I think there's a real parallel between the way that Watkins kind of like depicts these generals and their approach to the concept of the Cold War, with that idea of futility of war, and the the average soldier is just left to his own devices, while a bourgeois general class doesn't really care and isn't really competent. But
the problem is with that,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, the problem is there the military system had come on in sways by the point you're making this.
Yeah, no, exactly. And
so the movie doesn't
there's
age
a lot of
very well at all.
There's a lot of older attitudes portrayed. I think the British officer is quite racist about it, the African American soldier, and there's a lot of out and out.
Well, they've dressed him like
questionable.
Kate. He's dressed like almost like a First World War general as well.
Yeah, so there's interesting parallels there. I think, as you say, it had a lot of potential, and I think that undercurrent of sci-fi had a real potentiality to be really interesting. So it's pretty high tech for the period. You've got people watching on monitors, remote cameras are moving. There's a public address system in the tunnels, like they tell them to get moving, and that kind of stuff. They cut to the control room, and there's loads of buttons and things, and then there's a like a teletype that kind of like prints out messages, which is a bit like Space 2001, and it has this super stupid sound effect that really made me laugh, where it's like beep, 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 as it's typing.
That's so off-putting.
And, and it's like, well, was that the best sound you could find for that one? But, and obviously the translator we mentioned earlier. So there's loads of little bits of sci-fi and tech that kind of underline the concepts that Watkins is going for. But it never really shows you the machine and how it works and how it shapes the game. It's suggested that it's automated and follows its own path. At one point where they switch over from manual to automated, and it goes haywire and there's explosions and it just sets itself off, and they turn it off, and then the French chap turns it back on so he can follow the lights to the control room. Mm-hmm. And in that final scene, the controller basically says, well, you don't want to break the machine. The machine has used you to turn it back on, essentially. Which leans into the concept of technology and manipulation of humans by technology.
But yet again, it doesn't go in as hard as it should have done.
Agreed.
This was a real opportunity to make something quite reflective of its period, and I know that Watkins has toyed around at this point in his career. He's toyed around with the sort of the way that celebrity is in the 60s with the film privilege, and I know that has sort of maybe made him go back to what he knows best in terms of this movie with the documentary drama side of it. But you start off, as I said earlier, you have this this weird. There's this dude in a uniform chatting to camera being like, and this week's show is brought to you by pasta. And you're like, okay, cool.
And they serve up some of the driest, nastiest looking pasta.
But that's then a great opportunity, or a modern filmmaker or a postmodern filmmaker would have taken that. Someone like Sidney Lumet, think of Network, right? And then later on, think of films like The Running Man, that satire media is how we consume it. This was a really good opportunity to then
Demolition Man as well.
Demolition Man, yeah. There's a film called Gamer later with Gerald Butler that lampooned gaming culture in the early 2010s. So this movie really needs to be a mixture of Network, The Running Man, Dirty Dozen, and Gamer, where you see all of this going on from all the different aspects of what Watkins is trying to build up here. So we could have a fake advert comes on for some random thing. Then we cut to a promo for next week's war game. And it's like, it's the French versus the, East Germany, like I said earlier. Then you cut back to the studio and you might have like ex-head of NATO as like a pundit, like a sort of cheery sort of,
cut to some reactions of the audience at home around the world. Because it's going out to every household in the world. Like, cut to some of those,
Do your Watkins thing and think, well, what do you think of the war game? What do you think of the peace games? And the guy goes, oh, well, it's fun to watch, isn't it? Oh, it's right good. Last week they had a tank. There's like really interesting, great ways to do this. Yeah. But the movie just stops that so fast. And I'm like, how and why? Because I know what Watkins is ultimately trying to say here is what he's trying to say in every movie he made was reminding viewer that X and Y is bad. We shouldn't do this. But yet forgetting to make an entertaining movie to wrap all that up in. Like, the movies that say the most and make me think the most about media and things like that, like The Running Man, like Network, are inherently entertaining movies at their core. They are very chatty, they are very high concept, but they're good films as well. And this one it shits the bed massively. Like, I just can't get over how much it loses that initial hit. Because for 40 minutes, I was really in on this. And then it drops the ball completely. And then the game goes berserk because, oh my God, shock horror, a soldier was compassionate about another soldier on the other side. And that's what turns the machine off. And I'm like, really? Really? We're going there? Like, that's the big problem here? compassion.
Love conquers all plot. Yeah,
Love
great.
conquers all. Like to quote Professor Frink from The Simpsons, the secret ingredient is love. Who's been tampering with this
Yeah.
thing? Like it just. I was like, oh please, I just, oh, not for
It
me,
loses
not
it
for me
loses
this week.
direction massively
It
after
really
the
does.
first act. Sadly, it has a lot of promise, and as you say, like it could have been more than the sum of its parts. But I feel like after that first set piece, where there's a bit of a firefight in the tunnel, it just kind of devolves and it loses its way in a really odd, disjointed way as well. Like you don't see half of the set, the squad again. You don't see the Chinese soldiers
Mm,
ever really, other than she comes down a ladder at one point.
yeah.
They're in a canteen at another point, and then they climb up a wall. And then after they climb up a wall, you never see them again in the film.
No, they never
And it,
openly attack each other or shoot each other.
no,
It
and
needed that. It
yes,
needed
it does.
that.
It really did need. You said you summed it up really well when we were talking about this, before we recorded, that we needed to see the game get played so we knew what was going on and what
What
the
the
stakes
stakes
were.
are. Yeah.
And for us to have any real interaction with the characters, it's just a really interesting premise, just not well executed, and it's
No.
competently shot in a lot of places, and we get those little flourishes of what Watkins can do when he's on his game,
Hmm.
but I feel like the writing on this, or perhaps the production side, where they couldn't quite get to what they wanted to do in
Yeah.
terms of production value, perhaps.
It needed to be
Just
satire over
yeah,
anti-war.
it the tone is wrong.
The
And
tone is really
it
wrong.
could have been
Yeah.
anti-war all day long, but if they'd introduced some elements of satire, it's too straight-faced.
Mm.
I think they lean into the problem with this is throughout the film you think it's going to do something and it kind of nods towards it, but it doesn't lean into it. So it
Yeah.
doesn't lean into the satire. There's some very funny dialogue from the generals. You think it's going to be a little bit sci-fi, but it doesn't quite lean into that. And then there's a whole
Mm.
load of different ways that you feel like they were being
Yeah.
drawn
If you
towards, but
if
never
you
quite
want
follow the path.
if listeners want to go away and find it, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there was a brilliant play for today on YouTube that was made in the mid 80s. And it is shot in a pseudo documentary style of a Welsh filmmaker trying to make a film about how the British Army feels about NATO. And that is a comedy, but it is
Oh, I
so
remember
well
that one.
written.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will do it. We'll do it one week. It is so well written and funny, and it makes you reflect 10 times more than this does. And that was shot on a fraction of this's budget. I'm pretty certain. Like, that really does what this needed to do, is have a little bit of levity. Because,
Mm.
yes, we know war bad. We know nuclear bomb bad. But we need entertaining film, and we don't get it. Like, and that's what's really annoying. Like, yeah, War Game, harrowing, sticks with you. Culloden, harrowing, sticks with you. But they're good films. They're good films at their core. And this just isn't. And it really upsets me and annoys me because after this, Watkins doesn't revisit the war genre again, really. Doesn't really go back there. And
No, no.
it's such an odd one. And I've seen it online, it's lauded by certain people in certain camps. But I watched it and I really did try to give it the time of day because I was really trying. But it just lost me. It does nothing for me. This one. I've never felt this apathetic to a film in a while, actually, for what it could have been, and that's what
Yeah,
annoys me.
it's the promise of what it could have been, I think, is the thing. But
Mm,
I mean, that's our thoughts on the Gladiators. It doesn't detract from Watkins's fascinating career and
yeah,
his pioneering work into the pseudo documentary style. And as Rob said, the brilliant Culloden War Games, Forgotten Faces, all well worth checking out. I would recommend Gladiators to people just to see something like this, and in terms of where it sits within the discourse around nuclear war and cinema, and B, for just an example of a film that kind of just loses its way after the first act. Even for that, it's quite fascinating.
yeah. I'm with you there. It's on YouTube. God rest Peter Watkins, because without him, you probably wouldn't have the things like the Blair Witch Project, things like that. I don't think they would have been made, but they might not have been made in the way they were made. So it is very pioneering film for its day. So that brings us on to this week's large question, which was kind of inspired by the way me and Matt felt about this movie this week. What makes you roll your eyes the most when you watch a war film? So Kerry Thomas, right off the bat, he says fireballs for explosions, artillery shell lands in sand, huge fireball, bazooka fired at a stone wall, huge fireball. Takes away any sense of realism quicker than a Nick Cage cameo. Oh, Paul Burns goes, bad shooting by the bad guys. They never seem to hit anything, but one shot from a good guy and it takes out everybody. I love Where Eagles Dare, but it's a good example of this trait. Jay McUn, bad guys who can't hit the side of a barn with a company of MG42s, also nuclear hand grenades. Ian P, does anyone ever in a war film ever actually take a freaking aim shot that isn't specifically for the storyline?
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah, me too. Brian Williams, soldiers on patrol having deep conversations about the morality of war and the meaning of life.
Behind enemy lines really loudly.
Oh, yeah. Paul Woodidge, patrols walking along behind enemy lines, barely 2 feet apart and bellowing and shouting at each other.
There you go. Paul knows. Woody knows.
Paul knows. Woody knows. Simon Whippet, the German stormtrooper's magnificent ability to hit a target 20, 80 yards away. Oh, wait, full Star Wars mode. That seems to really annoy people this week. Dr. Philip Blood goes, American war films. Stephen Fisher, normal conversations in helicopters.
Yes.
That's a great one. Andy Brown, a squad alone behind the lines and not hearing any firing or shelling. Ian Mays, the whole gun cocking thing bugs me, especially the Germans in The Longest Day. He cycles the bolt that sounds nothing like a cricket and the guy gets shot. If you cock a gun, do it necessarily, not all the goddamn time. John Betts says bad berets. Wild Geese is terrible for that. Pete the Paint, the wrong scenery, backdrops, foliage. Gareth S just goes Americans. America's getting tarnished this week. Bert Plum's Wang, to round us out, says tanks from one era pretending to be tanks from another era.
It's the wrong bloody tank.
The wrong bloody tank. What makes your eyes roll, Matt?
Oh God, I've watched that many war movies now. I just blind to it now. The propensity not to reload still bugs me. Tropes in general that are just leaned into a little too hard. Minefields full of anti-tank mines triggered by footsteps. People that are cast decades older than they need to be in the role.
Yeah, that doesn't annoy me as much, actually, because I'm like, you have to cast actors that people want to see. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. I mean, I'll happily watch 80-year-old Tom Hanks be a destroyer captain again. I don't.
Oh, for sure.
You know, when he gets around to doing Greyhound 2. The time when that kind of like triggers me is when it's a cast of young and up and coming actors, or it's a cast of no-name actors that you're not particularly familiar with, and they're all in roles where they would be either a certain age or they're just wildly miscast.
Okay.
That's
interesting.
probably what kind of grinds my gears occasionally. But generally speaking, I'm pretty easygoing these days.
Yeah, I think I am a little bit more. Ever since starting doing the show, I'm a little bit less, I think, with it. But the one thing that annoys me, and this is movie wide, that makes my eye rolls a lot, eyes roll a lot, is the constant need. And I don't know if this is a sound problem or a sound effect problem, or it's just a trope that's just become so embedded in film culture and TV culture. Whenever anyone gets a gun out, it needs to go. Guns don't do that. If your gun's making a chunk chunk sound, something's wrong with it when you move it around.
Yeah, when you move it around, if it's making it
and I know it's an audio trigger for the audience, so you can go, oh, there's a gun. Oh my god, what's going to happen? But I'm like,
tell you what, though,
stuff doesn't do that.
Yeah, caveating off that and off some of the comments from the listeners. What as a firearm specialist, what triggers me is when a gun of a particular type makes the sound of another particular type of firearm. So when someone like racks the bolt on an AK and it's a pump action shotgun sound, I'm like, what the fuck?
This is a very Matmos problem to have.
Oh yeah, it's that triggers something deep inside. I'm like, that's not right.
Anyway, so that was the Peace Game. Watch it or don't. It's down to you, folks. We've been fighting on film. You've been the listeners. Catch us next week for another war movie review. Do go and follow us over on Instagram and follow Double Diamond too to win some tasty, tasty beers. And we'll catch you again next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.